welcome to G Fun Facts Online. In our modern world, a single number holds immense power. It can start or stop political careers, send stock markets soaring or crashing, and define a nation's place on the global stage. That number is the gross domestic product, or GDP. Every quarter, governments, investors, and news outlets wait with bated breath for its release. But what is this number really? How did it become the ultimate measure of a country's success? And in a world facing challenges like climate change and inequality, is it still the right tool to guide us? Today, we're decoding the omnipresent number, GDP. At its most basic, gross domestic product is the total market value of all the final goods and services produced within a country's borders during a specific period, usually a quarter or a year. It's like a national price tag for everything made and sold, from cars and coffee to haircuts and software. The most common way to calculate it is the expenditure approach, which adds up everything everyone spent. The formula is GDP equals C plus I plus G plus net exports. Let's break that down. C is for consumption. This is the biggest piece of the pie, representing all the money spent by households on goods like food and clothes, and services like a Netflix subscription. I is for investment. This isn't stocks and bonds, but spending by businesses on new equipment, software, and buildings, plus household spending on new homes. G is for government spending. This includes everything the government buys, from building roads and schools to military hardware and paying public employees. And finally, net exports, which is a country's total exports minus its total imports. If a country exports more than it imports, that adds to GDP. If it imports more, it subtracts from it. While this is the main method, there are two others: the production approach, which sums up the value added at each stage of production, and the income approach, which adds up all the wages, profits, and rents earned in the economy. In theory, all three methods should give you the same number. Now, a crucial distinction is between nominal and real GDP. Nominal GDP uses current prices, so it can go up just because of inflation, not because we're actually producing more stuff. To get a true picture of growth, economists use real GDP, which is adjusted for inflation. It allows us to see if the actual volume of goods and services is growing over time. The idea of measuring a national economy isn't new. It dates back to the 17th century, but the modern concept of GDP was born from crisis. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, the US government was flying blind, with no real data on what was happening to the economy. They tasked an economist named Simon Kuznets to create a comprehensive measure. In 1934, he delivered his report, laying the groundwork for what would become GDP. Its use exploded during World War II, as nations needed to measure their productive capacity for the war effort. Then, at the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference, which established the post-war global economic order, GDP was cemented as the standard for measuring national economies. It became the ultimate symbol of progress, tracking the post-war economic booms in America, Germany, and France. But here's the fascinating part. The creator, Simon Kuznets, issued a stark warning from the very beginning. In his report to Congress, he stated, quote, "The welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measure of national income." He worried that the simplicity of a single number would be seductive, obscuring the real, complex picture of human well-being. His warning was largely ignored. The power of a single comparable number was just too appealing. So how exactly does this number shape our world today? For governments and central banks, it's the primary dashboard for the economy. A strong GDP growth rate might prompt a central bank like the US Federal Reserve to raise interest rates to prevent the economy from overheating and control inflation. If GDP is shrinking, they might cut rates to encourage borrowing and spending to stimulate growth. Similarly, governments use GDP data to guide their spending and tax policies. During a recession, they might increase spending on infrastructure projects or cut taxes to boost the economy. Investors around the world follow GDP figures religiously. A country with a strong growing GDP is an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, as companies see a growing market and potential for higher profits. Individual investors also use this data to decide where to allocate their assets, favoring countries with robust economic growth. On the world stage, GDP is often used as a shorthand for a nation's power and influence. A larger economy typically means more geopolitical clout, more sway in trade negotiations, and a greater role in international organizations like the World Bank and IMF. A country's GDP per capita is even used to determine its eligibility for international aid. But despite its massive influence, the cracks in GDP's facade have become impossible to ignore. Kuznets' original warnings are more relevant than ever. One of the biggest criticisms is what GDP fails to count. Imagine a massive oil spill. The cleanup effort, the boats, the equipment, the wages for workers, all of that adds to GDP. The environmental devastation, the loss of wildlife, the damage to the local tourism and fishing industries, GDP doesn't subtract a penny for that. It has no mechanism for deducting the costs of pollution, resource depletion, or climate change. In fact, many things that are bad for us, like spending on prisons, security alarms, or healthcare for preventable diseases, actually make GDP go up. GDP is also blind to a huge amount of valuable work simply because no money changes hands. The unpaid labor of caring for children or elderly parents, cooking, cleaning, volunteering, all essential for a functioning society, is completely invisible in GDP figures. In many developing nations, a large informal or black market economy also goes uncounted, leading to an underestimation of their true economic output. And perhaps the most glaring flaw is that GDP tells us nothing about inequality. A country's GDP could be soaring, but if all that new wealth is flowing to the top 1%, the vast majority of citizens might not see any improvement in their lives. A rising tide does not lift all boats if some boats are luxury yachts and others have holes in them. The growing dissatisfaction with this single-minded focus on growth has led to a search for better alternatives. One of the most famous is the Human Development Index, or HDI, developed by the United Nations. The HDI combines GDP per capita with two other crucial dimensions: health, measured by life expectancy, and education, measured by years of schooling. It provides a more rounded picture of a country's progress, showing that wealth alone doesn't guarantee a good life. Another alternative is the Genuine Progress Indicator, or GPI. GPI starts with the same consumption data as GDP, but then it makes a series of adjustments. It adds positive contributions that GDP ignores, like the value of household and volunteer work. Then, it subtracts the negatives, like the cost of crime, pollution, resource depletion, and income inequality. In studies where GPI has been calculated, it often shows a very different trend to GDP, suggesting that while our economies have grown, our actual well-being has stagnated or even declined. The small Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan has taken this idea a step further, famously replacing GDP with GNH, or Gross National Happiness. GNH is a philosophy that guides the country's development based on four pillars: sustainable development, environmental conservation, cultural preservation, and good governance. These are measured across 9 domains, including psychological well-being, community vitality, and time use. It's a radical and holistic reimagining of what national success means. Other alternatives include the Happy Planet Index, which measures a country's ability to deliver long, happy, sustainable lives for its people, and the OECD's Better Life Index, which allows comparisons across dozens of countries on 11 topics, from housing to work-life balance. This movement to look beyond GDP is about tackling the defining challenges of the 21st century. How do we measure the value created by the digital economy, where so many services, from search engines to social media, are free? Researchers are working on new ways to capture the immense consumer surplus and well-being these technologies provide. More urgently, how do we integrate sustainability and climate change into our economic accounting? Frameworks like green GDP, which subtracts the costs of environmental damage, are a step in the right direction. Ultimately, this isn't just an academic debate for economists. It's a conversation about the kind of world we want to build. For over 70 years, we've been guided by a single-minded pursuit of economic growth, often at the expense of our societies and our planet. The time has come for a new paradigm, one that places human and planetary well-being at its heart. Moving beyond GDP won't be easy, but the future of our planet and our prosperity depends on us finding a better way to measure what truly matters.